When young assistant Haley Watson dared to steal the spotlight during a crucial presentation, no one, not even the arrogant Michael Carter, could have predicted that she would not only change the course of her career but also soften the hardened heart of the city's most renowned architect. Michael Carter was the very definition of architectural perfection, though his personality left much to be desired. Known for his talent in designing majestic structures, he was equally infamous for treating people as mere stepping stones to success. For Michael, the world revolved around grand projects and accolades, while issues like social impact were dismissed as irrelevant. He ruled his team with an iron fist, oblivious to the talent that might be right under his nose. Haley Watson, on the other hand, remained unnoticed, a quiet shadow in Michael's office. She was the one who scheduled his meetings, coordinated his travels, and sometimes saved the day when he overlooked crucial details. Despite being underestimated, Haley harbored a universe of ideas brimming inside her. But who, after all, would pay attention to a personal assistant? Certainly not Michael. While Michael collected awards and headlines, Haley collected notebooks filled with sketches and notes on how architecture could transform lives. Inspired by her own experiences in underprivileged communities, she dreamed of buildings that not only impressed but also embraced. Yet in Michael's toxic work environment, her dreams felt as distant as the starry skies she gazed at after each exhausting day. Michael's office was a stage for opulence and competition. Every employee sought to impress him, knowing that a single word of approval could mean a career breakthrough. Haley, however, stayed on the sidelines of this game, choosing instead to focus on her work with quiet efficiency. Behind her shy smile was a determined woman, simply waiting for the chance to prove her worth. To Michael, Haley was invisible. He had no idea that while he delivered speeches about aesthetics and innovation, she was absorbing every word, reinterpreting his ideas through a more humanitarian lens. He didn't know that while he pursued glory, she pursued the gratitude of entire communities. But his ignorance was about to be challenged. The relationship between Michael and Haley resembled that of a king and his subject. He issued commands with authority, and she obeyed without question. Yet Haley possessed something that set her apart, an almost supernatural patience and resilience she didn't fully understand herself. But patience has its limits, and Haley's moment was approaching. Michael believed his genius was unquestionable, viewing his career as a straight line to the top, devoid of obstacles. But the world was changing, and expectations for his profession were shifting as well. When he looked at Haley, all he saw was someone who could organize his schedule, unaware that she was orchestrating something far greater, a pathway to the future. Haley never let her frustration show. Every arrogant comment, every dismissive glance, added another brick to her inner fortress. Yet inside her, there was also a volcano of inspiration ready to erupt. And when that moment came, her brilliance would be impossible to ignore. She was in the right place, even if the right moment felt out of reach. Deep down, Michael knew his success depended on many hands besides his own. He just wouldn't admit it. Haley, on the other hand, understood that her chance to shine relied on learning, growing, and being ready when the time came. Both were on the brink of changes they couldn't yet imagine. Michael Carter's routine was upended when he received an invitation that felt like both an opportunity and a trap. A consortium of philanthropic investors wanted something revolutionary, not just beautiful but socially transformative. Michael, a staunch advocate of pure aesthetics, felt the ground shift beneath him. This wasn't his area of expertise, and the looming deadline pressed on him like a relentless alarm. It was then that his eyes turned to Haley Watson, the assistant who always seemed to anticipate his needs before he voiced them. She can organize this, he thought, downplaying the complexity of the task. What he didn't realize was that, for Haley, this was the opportunity she had been waiting for. After all, it wasn't every day that the most demanding boss in town asked for help. Haley accepted the challenge with a mix of trepidation and enthusiasm. She knew she was being underestimated but saw Michael's request as a chance to showcase her talent and perhaps earn the respect she had long been denied. What began as a simple administrative task quickly grew into something much greater, a project that reflected her own dreams of architecture that was useful, beautiful, and humane. Michael approached the project in his usual style, bold, grand, but utterly disconnected from practical realities. Haley, silently observing, took notes. During her breaks, she sketched ideas that could transform his cold designs into something vibrant with life and meaning. Each of her drafts carried a fragment of her vision, a vision Michael still completely ignored. As the days passed, Haley began to take risks. During a project review, she made small suggestions, subtle enough not to seem intrusive but strategic enough to plant seeds of doubt in Michael's mind. "What if we added a community space here?" she would say, as if proposing a minor adjustment. Michael frowned but jotted it down, perhaps out of sheer curiosity. Haley knew Michael wasn't one to take advice easily. So, she chose a different path, influencing him indirectly, without him realizing he was conceding. In every meeting, she presented data on the social impact of similar projects, articles by renowned architects, and even stories of communities transformed by thoughtful architecture. Slowly but surely, her ideas began to take root, albeit subtly. Michael, for his part, started to realize he was in unfamiliar territory. He hated admitting weakness but knew he needed more than his perfect aesthetics to win over the investors. Reluctantly, he allowed Haley to incorporate some of her ideas into the project, a small gesture that, for her, marked the beginning of a silent revolution. Tensions mounted as the deadline loomed. Michael saw it approach like an impending storm, while Haley felt the weight of responsibility grow heavier. Yet she didn't give up. The opportunity was too significant to let slip, and her passion for community-focused architecture drove her to keep pushing, even if it meant facing Michael's disdain. As the presentation began to take shape, a clear blend of styles emerged. On one side, Michael's grandeur, on the other, Haley's social functionality. Though their visions remained worlds apart, something was beginning to align. Haley, however, knew the hardest battle was yet to come, convincing Michael to let her shine on the day of the presentation. And so, what started as a simple request for help became the catalyst for profound change. Michael still saw Haley as an efficient assistant, but she knew she was about to prove she was so much more than that. Michael Carter didn't like sharing the spotlight, especially not with someone he considered a backstage player. When Haley began suggesting bolder changes to the project, his reaction was immediate and defensive. "This isn't what the investors want," he would cut her off, not even glancing at the papers she brought. To him, innovation was synonymous with aesthetic complexity, not social integration. His stubbornness seemed unshakable. Haley, on the other hand, felt her frustration growing. Her ideas weren't just rejected, they weren't even acknowledged. Each "no" from Michael demanded more courage to keep pushing because she knew she was betting far more on this project than he could imagine. This presentation was more than work. It was a chance to bring to life the projects she had dreamed of since her early days in architecture. Despite Michael's resistance, Haley pressed on. During endless nights, she worked alone, revising elements of the project to include social impact, even without her boss's consent. But each day felt more challenging. Michael was determined to stick to his vision, ignoring all attempts to steer him in a new direction. The tension between them was growing, like a rope stretched to its limit. Michael's discomfort was palpable. He felt Haley was overstepping boundaries, becoming too daring. "You're my assistant, not my partner," he snapped one day in exasperation. The words echoed in Haley's heart like a door slamming shut. For a moment, she almost gave in. Maybe it would be easier to step back, to retreat into the safe role of someone who doesn't challenge but simply obeys. But retreating wasn't in Haley's nature. She knew Michael's vision, no matter how impressive, wouldn't be enough to win over the investors. They wanted more than beauty, they wanted purpose. And if Michael couldn't see that, she would have to find a way to show him. The challenge was how to do so without undermining the hierarchy Michael so rigidly upheld. While Haley struggled to find balance, Michael started feeling threatened. It wasn't just the project at stake, it was his pride, his reputation. The possibility that Haley might be right was something he wasn't ready to face. So he reinforced his defenses, becoming even more inflexible. "This is what I do best," he told himself, trying to ignore the nagging feeling that something was missing. Even so, Haley didn't give up. She began presenting her ideas indirectly, slipping them into smaller meetings or incorporating subtle changes into the project that wouldn't draw too much attention. Her persistence was not just a testament to her determination but also to her belief that architecture could be so much more than an impressive facade. Their relationship was reaching a breaking point. Each interaction was loaded with tension, like an emotional chess match. Michael refused to yield, and Haley couldn't afford to back down. It was a battle of wills, with the stakes being not just a successful project but the chance to rewrite both their narratives. Deep down, Haley knew Michael wasn't just arrogant, he was afraid. Afraid to take risks, to be vulnerable, to fail. And as frustrating as it was, she understood that. After all, she was scared too. But something in her heart kept her going, even when everything seemed to conspire against her. And that something would lead her to cross the line Michael wasn't willing to approach. One evening, after yet another frustrating argument with Michael, Haley came home feeling a mix of anger and exhaustion. The constant fight to prove her worth felt like an unbearable weight. But amidst the discouragement, her eyes fell on a book that had always inspired her, Architecture for the Soul, written by a renowned humanitarian architect. It was more than a technical guide. It was a manifesto about how architecture could transform lives. That night, those pages reignited something inside her. The projects described in the book showcased how small acts of creativity could spark massive changes in marginalized communities. Haley read about schools built with local materials, public squares restoring dignity to neighborhoods, and shelters giving struggling families a fresh start. Each story was a spark that illuminated her own passion for community-centered architecture, something she had never been given the chance to fully explore. Inspired by those ideas, Haley began sketching new proposals for Michael's project, this time with greater boldness. Where she had once hesitated to challenge her boss, she now felt sure her ideas could make a difference. Each line she drew seemed to answer the doubts Michael constantly cast over her. For the first time, she wasn't just refining someone else's work, she was creating something of her own. The next day, Haley brought a set of notes and sketches to the office but didn't hand them directly to Michael. Instead, she strategically left the papers on the conference table, mixed in with other documents. Her hope was that he would stumble upon them and be drawn in by their clarity and impact. It was a risky move, but Haley knew she didn't have many options. Meanwhile, Michael began to notice Haley's unusual dedication to the project. He saw her late nights, her murmured phone calls, and even the scattered sketches in her notebook. Yet he ignored it all, convinced she was merely following orders. But in a moment of curiosity, he picked up one of the papers left on the table. What he saw made him pause. It was a simple sketch, but one filled with meaning. The design not only met Michael's aesthetic standards but also incorporated green spaces, community areas, and sustainable features. He recognized the brilliance of something new, something that appealed not just to the eye but also to the heart. But admitting this would mean ceding ground, and he wasn't ready for that yet. As Michael wrestled with his pride, Haley found solace in her late-night readings and research into projects that had genuinely transformed communities. Each story served as an invisible mentor, guiding her towards something greater. In her mind, she knew she still had much to learn, but she also knew she had something to teach, even if Michael wasn't ready to listen. With each page of the book, Haley's determination grew. It was no longer just about the project. It was about proving that architecture could be an act of love, gratitude, and renewal. That's what the investors wanted, and she was certain it was what the world needed. Now she just had to find a way to convince Michael without directly confronting him. Finally, Haley began leaving clearer traces of her involvement in the project. She knew time was running out and that eventually, Michael would have to accept help. But the question lingered. When would he realize that by rejecting her ideas, he was sabotaging himself? And more importantly, when would he be ready to see Haley not as an assistant but as an indispensable ally? The big day of the presentation arrived, bringing a palpable tension to Michael Carter's office. The atmosphere was a mix of urgency and nerves, and while the team prepared for the event, Michael exuded confidence, or at least pretended to. He was certain his flawless pitch and grand project would impress the investors. Haley, however, felt restless. She knew his ideas, though visually stunning, wouldn't meet the consortium's expectations. When the investors finally took their seats in the conference room, Michael began his presentation with his usual flair. He spoke of design, innovation, and aesthetics, but the investors' reactions were lukewarm. It was clear they were expecting something more. Haley, sitting in the back, watched with sweaty palms and a racing heart. The moment she feared and anticipated had finally arrived. The investors began questioning the social relevance of the project. Michael, caught off guard, tried to deflect the investors' questions with vague responses. But his lofty demeanor failed to convince the group, whose dissatisfaction grew more evident by the second. That's when Margaret, the most influential investor, requested to hear other perspectives. Haley felt a chill run down her spine, but something deep inside told her it was time to act. Before she could second-guess herself, she stood up and asked for permission to speak. All eyes in the room turned to Haley. Her voice wavered at first, but she quickly found her rhythm, speaking with passion and purpose. She explained how architecture could transform lives by creating spaces that connect people and communities. She spoke about sustainability, accessibility, and the human impact embedded in every line of a blueprint. Her words were unpolished but sincere, resonating deeply with the investors. The room became captivated. Margaret leaned forward with a subtle smile, while others began jotting down notes. Michael, however, was torn between shock and embarrassment. To him, it felt as though Haley had stepped onto a stage that belonged solely to him. Yet, there was no denying the moment. Haley had captured the attention he could not. As Haley spoke, the investors began directing their questions to her, leaving Michael sidelined. It was a blow to his ego but also a crack in the wall he had built around himself. Haley not only answered their questions but also presented ideas that enhanced and improved the original project. For the first time, Michael saw the untapped potential he had overlooked in his assistant. When the presentation concluded, Haley's impact was undeniable. Margaret went out of her way to praise her in front of everyone, highlighting the importance of her vision for the project's success. The other investors agreed, making it clear their support was contingent on incorporating Haley's ideas. It was a triumphant moment for Haley and a humiliating one for Michael. Back at the office, the atmosphere was tense. Michael didn't know how to process what had just happened. Part of him was furious, yet another part begrudgingly recognized the value of what Haley had done. She, on the other hand, didn't expect gratitude. She knew she had crossed a line, but she didn't regret it. For the first time, she felt truly seen. What no one realized was that this was only the beginning. Haley had proven her worth, but the cost of her boldness was yet to be paid. And Michael, still simmering in his anger, was about to learn a lesson that would transform not only his career but also his entire outlook on life. The days following the presentation were an emotional whirlwind in Michael Carter's office. Haley, now recognized by the investors, became the talk of the workplace. Some admired her quietly, while others resented her for stealing the spotlight, but no one was more conflicted than Michael, who oscillated between anger and confusion, trying to reconcile how his personal assistant had become the center of attention. For Haley, the newfound recognition came with its own set of challenges. Michael treated her coldly, almost as if punishing her for her success. He ignored her in meetings and avoided direct interaction. Despite this, Haley persevered. She continued to work with the same dedication, even as each encounter with Michael felt like walking a tightrope. Her gratitude toward the investors who had believed in her, especially Margaret, kept her going. Margaret, in turn, became an unexpected ally. She began mentoring Haley discreetly, recommending books and connecting her with professionals who shared her vision. "You have something special, Haley. Don't let anyone take that away from you," she said during a phone call. Those words gave Haley the strength to withstand the critical stares and Michael's increasingly hostile behavior. Not everyone supported Haley's rise, however. Some members of the consortium questioned her audacity, whispering that she had overstepped her boundaries. "She's just an assistant," some murmured. Michael, fueled by his wounded pride, seemed to agree. He started assigning Haley trivial tasks, attempting to remind her of her place. But to his surprise, she completed everything with her characteristic excellence, refusing to be rattled. The tension between Michael and Haley reached a breaking point during a meeting to finalize the project. Michael outright dismissed Haley's contributions, replacing her ideas with elements the investors had already rejected. Haley knew the confrontation was inevitable. "Michael, if we continue down this path, we'll lose their support," she said, trying to stay calm. Her words were met with icy silence. As Michael spiraled deeper into his resistance, Haley found unexpected allies among her colleagues. Some began to see that her ideas weren't just relevant, they were necessary. Jake, a fellow architect, started sharing information with Haley, helping her refine her proposals in secret. "They may not admit it, but you're the one keeping this project afloat," he told her. Pressure on Michael continued to mount. The investors grew impatient, demanding more frequent and detailed updates. He felt the ground crumbling beneath him, yet his pride kept him from asking for help. To him, admitting he needed Haley was tantamount to admitting failure. But reality was closing in on him fast. Meanwhile, Haley worked tirelessly, balancing her passion for the project with the emotional minefield that was her relationship with Michael. Their interactions became increasingly fraught, each exchange feeling like a battle for control. But Haley understood that Michael's resistance wasn't just directed at her, it was a fight against himself. Time was running out, and the fate of the project hinged on a decision Michael had to make: continue opposing Haley or recognize that, together, they could create something truly transformative. For Haley, the fight wasn't over, but she was determined to win, not for herself, but for the communities that could be impacted by the project. After weeks of unbearable tension, the inevitable showdown between Michael and Haley finally came. Their already fragile relationship completely unraveled during a heated meeting. Consumed by his wounded pride, Michael accused Haley of overstepping her role. "You don't understand what's at stake here," he shouted, his voice laced with frustration. Haley, though hurt, remained composed. "I understand more than you think," she replied, her voice steady yet tinged with pain. The dismissal hit like a thunderbolt. Unable to handle the threat Haley posed to his ego, Michael decided to cut her from his team. "You're out," he said coldly, refusing to meet her eyes. Stunned, Haley left the office without a word. Outside, the weight of injustice crashed over her, but along with it came something else: an unshakable resolve to move forward. While Michael grappled with the void left by Haley's departure, Margaret took action behind the scenes. Outraged by the dismissal, she contacted Haley almost immediately. "I have something for you," she said, her voice firm yet encouraging. Haley was offered a position at Margaret's organization, dedicated to socially impactful projects. It was the opportunity Haley had always dreamed of but never dared to imagine as real. For Michael, Haley's absence had immediate repercussions. Investors began questioning his decisions more harshly, and deadlines he once controlled started slipping away. He found himself cornered, without the compass Haley had quietly become, though he would never admit it. His confidence, once blinding, began to dim, leaving only the stark reality of his isolation. Meanwhile, Haley thrived in her new environment. For the first time, she was surrounded by people who not only recognized her ideas but championed them. In every meeting, she presented proposals that exceeded expectations, showcasing the human impact architecture could achieve. The gratitude she received from communities became a powerful fuel, renewing her faith in herself and her dreams. Michael faced a cavern of internal doubts. As he reviewed the project's sketches, each line felt empty, devoid of purpose. The investors' criticisms grew sharper, and he realized he was on the verge of losing not only the project but also the credibility he had spent years building. It was a slow, inevitable collapse. A turning point came when Margaret announced her organization had acquired a significant stake in Michael's company. It was a strategic move, but also a personal one. With this new arrangement, Haley and Michael were forced to work together again, though this time in entirely different roles. Haley was now an equal partner in the project that had once been solely under Michael's control. Their first encounter after her dismissal was thick with tension. Michael avoided meeting Haley's eyes, while she maintained a professional but distant demeanor. For both of them, this was uncharted territory. Michael bore the weight of his humiliation, while Haley worked hard to conceal her lingering resentment. But one thing was clear: they had to find a way to collaborate. In the hidden depths of his struggle, Michael began questioning not only his decisions but also his values. He reflected on the people who had suffered under his arrogance and realized the grandeur of his projects had never filled the void in his soul. Haley, on the other hand, was more determined than ever to prove that architecture could be a force for renewal, not just for spaces but for people. As they prepared for the next challenge, a new dynamic began to emerge. Michael, though reluctant, started listening to Haley more attentively. She, in turn, saw beyond his arrogance to a lost man fighting to find his way. The stage was set for a transformation neither could foresee. Their first joint project after the upheaval was both professionally and emotionally challenging. The task was to revitalize an underserved neighborhood by transforming an abandoned space into a multifunctional community center. For Haley, it was a chance to bring her ideas to life on a larger scale. For Michael, it was a struggle to maintain relevance while grappling with the discomfort of no longer being in complete control. Tensions flared early. Michael pushed for a focus on bold, imposing design, while Haley argued for functionality and social impact. "This isn't about you, Michael. It's about the people who will live with this every day," she said during a heated meeting. He shot back, "Without aesthetics, you lose the investor's interest." It was a clash of egos and ideals, with neither willing to back down. The field team, however, began gravitating toward Haley. Her hands-on approach and ability to connect with local residents won her allies. While Michael kept his distance, Haley listened to the community's stories, understood their needs, and wove those insights into the project. This direct engagement shaped the design in ways no software or model could replicate. Watching from the sidelines, Michael began to feel something unfamiliar: doubt. He saw the residents' faces light up as Haley presented her ideas, explaining how each detail was crafted to improve their lives. For the first time, he wondered if his work had ever truly been for the people, or just to satisfy his own ego. The question unsettled him but also sparked a flicker of curiosity. The turning point came during a site visit. An elderly resident approached Michael, unaware of his initial resistance, and thanked him for finally doing something for us. The heartfelt gratitude struck Michael like lightning. He realized it wasn't just about visual impact, it was about human impact. It was something he had always overlooked but could no longer deny. Michael still had a long way to go. In meetings, he resisted some of Haley's ideas, but his demeanor began to shift. He interrupted less and started asking questions. Haley noticed the change but didn't let herself get carried away. She knew his transformation needed to be genuine, not just a ploy to win favor with the investors. The ultimate test came when a critical error, made during the initial planning phase before Haley's involvement, threatened to derail the project. Desperate, Michael tried to fix the issue alone but soon realized he couldn't do it without Haley's help. Reluctantly, he approached her with humility for the first time. "I need your help," he said, almost in a whisper. Haley, taken aback, paused before responding. "This isn't about us, Michael. It's about what we need to do for these people," she replied, agreeing to collaborate with him to resolve the problem. That conversation marked the beginning of a fragile truce between them. Together, they found a creative, functional solution to the setback. Their teamwork wasn't perfect, but it worked. More importantly, it showed them both that collaboration could be more powerful than competition. Michael began to see the value of listening and learning, while Haley realized that even the most stubborn hearts could change. Challenges remained, but for the first time, they seemed to be on the same page. As the project progressed, the neighborhood began to transform before everyone's eyes. The abandoned space came to life with green areas, community meeting rooms, and even a small marketplace, all built with active input from the residents. For Haley, every brick was a reminder of her work's significance. For Michael, the gratitude on the residents' faces became a reward he had never thought to seek or need. During the community center's grand opening, Michael seemed different. The man who once preferred the spotlight of the press to real interactions walked among the residents with a changed expression. When a mother tearfully thanked him for creating a space where her children could take dance classes, he felt something profound. For the first time, he understood the true meaning of impact. Haley, watching from a distance, noticed the shift. Michael's transformation didn't escape Haley's attention. He still had moments of resistance but was learning to listen and appreciate the stories behind every architectural choice. When he invited her to discuss a project detail, asking for her honest opinion, she knew something had changed. "What do you think?" he asked, without the arrogance that had once defined him. For Haley, it was a small but meaningful step. The project's success drew media attention and investor praise, but its true impact was felt within the community. Children played in the new park, seniors gathered in the cultural hall, and small entrepreneurs found space to grow their businesses. Every corner of the center was living proof that architecture could be more than aesthetic. It could be a tool for renewal. Michael, for the first time, seemed proud of something beyond himself. Margaret, ever observant, brought Haley and Michael together after the opening for a conversation. "You two make an unexpected but extraordinary team," she said with a smile. "I hope this project is just the beginning." Haley couldn't help but smile, knowing there was still work to be done between her and Michael. He simply nodded, visibly moved by Margaret's words. Michael surprised everyone, including himself, by proposing a groundbreaking initiative, creating a division within the company dedicated solely to socially impactful projects. He asked Haley to lead the initiative, something she never would have imagined at the start of her journey with him. "I wouldn't have gotten here without you," he admitted, his tone filled with sincerity. It was a moment of redemption for both of them. Haley's response was immediate, yet filled with conditions. "I accept, but only if we're true partners," she said, making it clear she wouldn't allow herself to be underestimated again. Michael smiled, nodding. "Partners?" he repeated, as if savoring the word for the first time. It marked the beginning of a new dynamic between them, built not only on respect but on a shared vision. While Haley celebrated the success of the project, she knew her greatest reward wasn't the recognition or her new position, it was the transformation she had helped spark. Not just in the neighborhood, but also in Michael. He still had much to learn, but now he was willing to try. For Haley, that alone was a significant step forward. The project had fulfilled its purpose, but Haley and Michael's journey was far from over. Together, they had discovered something beyond buildings and contracts, the ability to use their skills to create lasting impact. And with that, a new chapter in their lives was about to begin. With the community project's success still making waves, Michael and Haley returned to the office with a renewed sense of purpose. The firm, once known solely for its luxurious and soulless projects, began attracting attention for its shift towards social responsibility. But reclaiming their place in the traditional market wouldn't be easy. Many investors remained skeptical of the change, and even the internal team was divided. Michael knew it was time to prove this transformation was more than a passing phase. Now leading the new social impact division, Haley faced challenges of her own. She had autonomy, but she also knew many were waiting for her to fail. Some viewed her rise as a threat, others as a deviation from the company's essence. Still, Haley was determined to show that architecture and impact could go hand in hand. At every meeting, she presented projects that blended functionality, aesthetics, and purpose, even under skeptical gazes. Michael, for his part, began acting like a true partner. He didn't just support Haley's initiatives, he actively promoted them. During a presentation to new investors, he surprised everyone by giving Haley the floor. "She's the mind behind this," he said with a humility no one expected. Haley realized they were finally working together, not against each other. The next project, however, a public school in an underserved neighborhood, brought new challenges. Michael's longtime partners resisted the idea, claiming it devalued the brand. Haley, though prepared for criticism, felt the weight of expectations. It was a trial by fire for both of them, and the outcome would determine the company's future. Seeing the pressure Haley faced, Michael became more involved. He visited the site with her, speaking with teachers, students, and families. These interactions began to change his perspective even further. "They just want to be heard," he admitted after a group of parents expressed their gratitude for being consulted. Haley saw in that moment a side of Michael she never imagined existed. As the project progressed, their partnership grew stronger. They discussed ideas, debated strategies, and most importantly, listened to each other. It was a completely new dynamic, one where their strengths complemented one another to achieve a common goal. In the process, Michael began to understand that a project's grandeur wasn't just in its appearance, but in the lives it could change. The internal team began to shift as well. Former skeptics started drawing inspiration from the division's success. The office atmosphere became more collaborative, and for the first time, Haley felt she wasn't alone in her fight for more inclusive architecture. Michael, meanwhile, transformed into a more approachable leader, willing to listen and learn, something that once seemed impossible. The school's success was a defining moment. When its doors opened for the first time, the community celebrated like it was a holiday. Michael and Haley stood side by side, watching children run through the halls and parents moved to tears by the opportunities now available for their families. Visibly emotional, Michael turned to Haley. "You were right all along," he said with a sincere smile. For Haley, those words were a quiet but meaningful victory. With the project complete, Michael and Haley returned to the office with a clear vision: to continue transforming lives through architecture. More than that, they returned as partners. Their journey was far from over, but they now knew they could face any challenge together. What had started as a return to the traditional market had become something much greater, a journey toward purpose. Their next challenge was the revitalization of a public hospital in one of the city's most neglected neighborhoods. The budget was tight, the conditions dire, and the deadlines nearly impossible. To many, it seemed like a doomed endeavor. But to Haley, it was the perfect opportunity to solidify everything she and Michael had learned together. The project met resistance from every angle. The company's board questioned whether associating with such a risky endeavor was worth it. Michael's former partners openly disapproved, dismissing the project as philanthropy with no financial return. But Michael stood firm. "We're doing this," he declared during a meeting, prioritizing social impact over his own reputation for the first time. The pressure, however, was immense. The team faced technical difficulties, delays in material deliveries, and even resistance from the hospital staff, who doubted the project's ability to bring real change. As always, Haley took the lead, listening to concerns and finding creative solutions to each problem. Michael, still adjusting to his new role, began following her lead with more humility than ever before. The turning point came during a crisis. An accident during renovations nearly halted the project entirely, creating distrust and discouragement among the team. Forced to find an immediate solution, Haley and Michael spent an entire night revising the plans. In that vulnerable moment, Michael admitted something Haley never expected to hear. "I don't know if I can do this alone." Haley responded with the steadfastness that defined her. "You're not alone, Michael. We're in this together." That exchange marked the rebirth of a partnership that now transcended the professional. They became a true team, fully trusting each other to overcome the obstacles ahead. That unity began to turn the tide. With each challenge conquered, the project took shape. Michael, who had once avoided direct contact with people, began visiting patients and listening to their stories. He realized their gratitude stemmed not just from the physical improvements to the hospital but from feeling seen and valued. This connection changed him irreversibly. Haley watched closely, knowing this was the Michael she had always believed he could become. When the hospital was finally completed, the grand opening was more than just an event, it was a milestone. Patients, doctors, and community members celebrated the revitalized space, which now offered dignity and hope to all who entered. Michael and Haley, standing side by side, were met with applause and heartfelt thanks. "This is what it means to make a difference," Michael said to Haley, his voice heavy with emotion. The hospital's impact reached far beyond the local community. The project was widely praised in the media, even earning awards for social innovation. More importantly, it marked the rebirth of Michael's company, now viewed as a shining example of how design could transform lives. Haley, finally recognized as an indispensable force, became a symbol of inspiration not only for her team but for the entire industry. In the end, Michael's greatest lesson wasn't just about his career, it was about rediscovering who he was. Haley's journey proved that even the most underestimated voices could drive powerful change. Together, they hadn't merely saved a project or a company, they had created a model of leadership rooted in empathy, renewal, and purpose. The transformation of Michael Carter and Haley Watson culminated in a legacy far beyond a portfolio of successful projects. The revitalized hospital became a beacon of renewal, not just for the community but for Michael's company itself. The once arrogant, self-centered architect was now seen as a visionary leader, but his true triumph lay in sharing the credit with Haley. To him, she wasn't just a partner, she was the soul who reignited his purpose. The company's new direction was celebrated widely, attracting clients who sought more than luxury. The transformation wasn't just external, it was reflected within the office itself. Once dominated by competition and rigid hierarchies, the workplace had become collaborative and welcoming. Haley, with her authentic leadership, inspired her colleagues to think beyond the obvious and consider the human impact of every project. Haley, in turn, felt a mix of fulfillment and humility. Seeing her ideas blossom and benefit so many people was more rewarding than she had ever imagined. But her greatest treasure was the assurance that her voice now had space and weight. Every decision, every meeting, was an opportunity to honor the values that had always guided her path, and to show that architecture could indeed be an act of love. Between Michael and Haley, the partnership that had started with turmoil evolved into something rare and remarkable. Their mutual respect and shared vision strengthened the bond between them, both professionally and personally. Small gestures, like a nod of approval or a word of encouragement, were enough to convey the deep connection they had built. Though neither was particularly expressive, what they shared was evident to everyone around them. A major milestone came with an unexpected invitation. An international consortium asked Michael and Haley to present their methodology at a global conference. It was a chance to show the world that architecture could be more than aesthetic, it could be a tool for social transformation. Michael, who had always enjoyed the spotlight, handed the main stage to Haley. "You deserve this," he said with a sincere smile. To her, the gesture was as meaningful as any project they had completed together. At the conference, Haley spoke with passion about the impact of community-centered architecture. Her story, intertwined with Michael's journey of redemption, moved the audience deeply. When she finished, the crowd gave her a standing ovation. Michael, watching from the audience, felt a different kind of pride, not for something he had created, but for someone he had helped flourish. In that moment, he realized that his greatest masterpiece wasn't a building but the partnership he had built with Haley. Back at the office, they continued pushing the company's boundaries. Every project became a new opportunity to blend innovation and impact, always with communities at the heart of their work. Haley's social impact division became a model for other firms, while Michael took on the role of mentor to young architects, sharing the lessons he had learned the hard way. Though the journey had been filled with challenges, the results were more than rewarding. Haley and Michael had not only transformed their careers but had also left a legacy to inspire future generations. And as they walked side by side toward their next project, they carried with them the understanding that true success wasn't in the grandeur of the structures they built but in the lives those structures touched.